Welcome in A to Z Sports Prime Time on this Sunday night, August the 11th. Holy shit, we got a football game to talk about, and we are very excited to have you guys in for another episode of the Prime Time program. That's right, Titans and Niners yesterday, preseason game number one. It was a Tennessee Titans win, 17-13, and came with all the bumps and bruises that you typically associate with preseason football, but still, there were some highlights, there were some lowlights, and a lot of different things for us to break down over the course of the next half hour, 45 minutes. We are grateful that you guys are here. I know you are anxious to talk about it because this is the first opportunity that you all have been able to see a lot of the different parts and pieces that we have been talking about for several months now. So looking forward to getting your feedback on all of this stuff after we saw starters, backups, into the reserves, late into the evening last night at Nissan Stadium in a Tennessee Titans preseason win. So we'll do the typical stock up, stock down. We'll obviously focus in, hone in on what Will Levis and the first team were able to produce in the two series that they were out there together. Wrap things up with a little Sunday Funday at the end of the show, because that's how this bad boy works. And before we do any of that, I need you guys to share the broadcast around on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, wherever you spend your time here with us. If you're hanging out on Twitter, please retweet the show. It's in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you're on Facebook Live, you can share now to public. That's in the bottom left. If you're on YouTube or Twitch, like Brock Kraft, Karen Davis, I see Christian, Reginald Thomas, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you tell a friend to do the same. A lot of you guys filling in here with your pregame thoughts. Reginald says, seen a few mishaps by J.C. Latham that nobody's talking about. Remember that those weren't starters. The grammar is terrible. Remember them wasn't starters. Remember that those were not starters, is what Reginald is saying. But yeah, listen. Reginald, we've been talking about this. This is one of the observations that I'm glad that people are going to make, because I'm not somebody who's thinking that the Titans offensive line is going to be good for, a considerable amount of time until they kind of work together, grow, and develop. And these are kind of the training wheels time of year where you get to see some of that ebbs and flows, some of those ups and downs, some of those speed bumps or logistical hurdles, technical difficulties that these players have not had to go through yet, because this is their first time seeing an uncommon opponent in the preseason program and training camp and all that stuff. They've been working against each other for the longest. Now they see real opposition for the first time, and that's the value of the preseason games. So we can get into this over the course of tonight's show. And also worth mentioning, because this is something that we do too often in preseason, and I appreciate that Bert left a note in the chat to this effect. J.C. Latham was primarily facing, and I'm going to butcher his first name. I have since he came out of BYU, Yetur Gross-Matos, who is a pass rusher, a former second-round pick, somebody who we talked about, as a matter of fact, for the Titans the year that he came out of the NFL draft, who's a really good pass rusher. He's going to play. Like, that starters. The word starter means very, very little to me in the NFL. You know why? Because the starting players for the Titans and for the Niners last night are just the players who took the very first snap of their respective offensive or defensive series that they were in. Is Jalen Harrell going to be a starting outside linebacker for you in 2024? No, but he's probably going to play some snaps. Is Dylan Radins going to be your starting right guard in 2024? I don't think so, but he's definitely going to play, right? You are going to see all manner of depth guys play for the same reason that backup quarterbacks have played all over in the last couple of years. 66 NFL quarterbacks played or started an NFL game last year. Why? Because dudes get hurt all the time. So denigrating anything that Latham did last night, all that to say, denigrating anything that Latham did last night against a depth role player does not mean that that's not still an NFL caliber player, right? Because all of those guys, almost all of those guys, are going to see some NFL action, some meaningful NFL action at some point in the coming season, right? So that is something I think that is worth keeping in mind when you talk about dinging people by saying, oh, well, the starters weren't out there. All these guys are going to play in the NFL. They're all NFL players. So anyway, let's get into it. Welcome into A to Z Sports Prime Time from the Zen Sports Studios. I'm your host, Buck Rising. I'm proud, as always, to be presented to you by the wonderful people at Zen Sports. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN. Get up to $100 on your no-danger first wager at zensports.com, where you can also bet the preseason. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer, and your Ford Bronco headquarters. Go to Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet or online at tworiversford.com. You can go to TrueMath Fitness in the Gulch for your first workout free as a Middle Tennessee resident. No workout ever recycled or repeated at TrueMath Fitness. And, of course, the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress. Get the intel edge you need to succeed, courtesy of the Ashton team. Okay. So, one, great to have you guys back in here. Great to be talking about an actual or kind of an actual NFL football game. And if you've been taking the offseason off, welcome back, baby. It's great to see you. Like John Vargas, or rather like David Dandy, who says, what up, Buck? It's been a while. Yeah, there's been no football. It's not everybody consumes the offense as rapidly as, or the offseason as rapidly as some of you do. So if you're just now checking back in because it's football season, happy football to all of you involved. All right. So I think that the Reginald says, so what's your take on Big Sweat? Did I text that right, Mr. Harvard grad? Just trying to get you to clean up your grammar a little bit. No, nobody's being dismissive of it. We're just like the preseason game, Reginald, right? We're going to watch the tape. We're going to improve. So, you can clean it up a little bit and we will make our way through this thing. Jeremy Graham says there's no such thing as an offseason. Somebody's been watching Josh Pate's show too much because there absolutely is something called an offseason. Anyway, a lot of good stuff to be taken away from last night, and we'll do stock up and stock down, people who helped themselves the most, people who hurt themselves the most. But ultimately, the Titans came away with a 17-13 win against the San Francisco 49ers. And probably the biggest headline, the number one headline, is 14 plays for the offense, for the starting offense, for the vast majority of the starting offense, right? Because you did not obviously see DeAndre Hopkins play for the most part. Everybody else did. 14 plays for the starting offense. They came away with 2 series, 2 touchdown drives. Now, was it all on the strength of their offensive efforts? No, because they were set up on their on the opponent's 15-yard line on their opening series because Kearis Jackson had a 63-yard kick return, huge. And then the Niners coaching staff on the sideline, and I haven't yet watched the TV copy back. I went back and watched the All-22 tape just so I could see like numbers of players, and it's tough to tell on the TV copy that way. But the Niners coaching staff was flagged for sideline interference, so they would have started at the Niners 30. They ended up at the Niners 15 and were able to score their opening touchdown on that drive to bring the score 7-7 after the first. I mean, it was the first team defense for the most part, right? You didn't have Jeff and you didn't have Harold Landry, and you didn't have L'Jarius Sneed or Chidobe Awuzie. So there was more starters than not on the defensive side of the ball for the Tennessee Titans last night. But they did allow San Francisco to go, how long was that opening drive? 11 plays, 74 yards in 5 minutes and 39 seconds to score the initial touchdown. Then the Titans were able to answer, and things kind of slowed down after that, though the Titans did get that second drive, that second scoring drive, and were able to put together more of a drive, right? 7 plays, 64 yards. You got an explosive play from Calvin Ridley. So you got to see some of the highlights that we've been talking about here in the last couple of weeks. Levis only threw 5 passes, right? And 4 were completed. He had 1 incompletion in the direction of Calvin Ridley. And it was mostly check down stuff, which is totally fine. So let's start here with your Two Rivers Ford take on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Which Titans player individually helped himself the most in the preseason? We will get to Brian Callahan. You'll hear from Brian Callahan and a couple of the players here in just a second on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. Which player individually, you only have to pick one, helped themselves the most after preseason game number 1 last night. It's your Two Rivers Ford take. As always, it is presented by the South's most trusted Ford dealer and your official Ford Bronco headquarters, Two Rivers Ford. If you haven't test driven a Ford Bronco yet, 10 out of 10 recommend. You don't even have to be in the market for a new vehicle. Two Rivers Ford always goes above and beyond to make sure that you're educated, informed, and also that you can enjoy the car buying process without feeling pressured to buy a vehicle, because their sales staff does not work on commission, which means they make a paycheck whether they sell you a car that day, that moment, that minute, that hour, or not. It's the best car buying experience out there. It's why Two Rivers Ford wins so many awards. Quality American-made Ford vehicles, award-winning customer service at the South's most trusted Ford dealer, Two Rivers Ford in Mount Juliet, or online at tworiversford.com. So, first and foremost, before we start talking about individual players, 14 plays, 14 points for the starting offense. That is the primary headline there. And a couple of different things to note. One, you saw Calvin Ridley do Calvin Ridley things, especially on that 22-yard catch and run to convert a 3rd and 10 situation. You saw the offensive line put in a couple of critical 3rd down situations for Levis to have to operate from the pocket, and you saw the protection hold up. They gave up 1 sack on the night, and I don't believe it was not of Will Levis. Will Levis was not sacked last night. In fact, it looks like Malik Willis was the only quarterback who was sacked. Mason Rudolph did not get sacked, and they didn't have a penalty in the entire first half of the football game. So there are a couple of different positives to take away from the first team offense, understanding that the defense a little more missing a few more pieces and parts. By the way, L'Jarius Sneed, Jeff Simmons, and Harold Landry all not expected to play in this preseason. We talked to Brian Callahan today about it. He did mention that, so something to just keep in the back of your mind. You'll see a lot of Marlon Davidson, a lot of Jalen Harrell, a lot of Jarvis Brownlee Jr. on the defensive side of the ball. But, point scoring in the preseason is not like I didn't expect them to come out there and hang 30 on the San Francisco 49ers, even though the Niners weren't playing a ton of their starters either. But I saw operation, which was important, critical to see. I saw pass protection, and in particular, 3rd down pass protection situations where I know Will Levis would have been sacked pretty handily, or at least pressured more last year. Saw a lot of good pocket integrity. Lloyd Cushenberry, I like the left side of the Titans offensive line a lot. I don't know if it's going to be a quote-unquote good unit from start to finish, but I know that the bones of a good unit are there, especially from left tackle to center with Latham, with Skoronski, with Cushenberry. You saw a lot of good work there. You saw some good work on the right side of the offensive line. You did see the right side of the offensive line struggle more than the left side did. I did think Nick Petit-Frere, though, acquitted himself well as the starting right tackle. Right guard continues to be an issue, and it was Dylan Radins who took the initial starting snaps there. He was the first player to go out there and take snaps at right guard, though you did see a handful of guys work in as well. I think that there is a lot of different things to take away, but players who you think helped themselves the most on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Rashid Jenkins says Dylan did a great job, though. No, that is I would disagree. With Dylan did a great job. And listen, Pro Football Focus grades are not everything, especially in a preseason game where the snaps are stunted and staggered, right? But Dylan Radins, in the preseason action that he got, was not even a top 25 player on the Titans roster from Pro Football Focus grades. Again, Pro Football Focus grades are not the end-all be-all, and I'm sure he did some things well that maybe somebody like me who's not completely trained in the art of our offensive line play is going to be able to determine. Christian says, pro scout Buck here. Well, listen, no, I'm not a pro scout, but you know who I do? You know why I do the job that I do? Because I talk to scouts, because I talk to coaches, because I'm around your football team more than I'm around my own family. So while my evaluation is not going to be the end-all be-all, I am not an NFL personnel evaluator by trade, but my job is to talk to them. And so what I am telling you is not solely my personal opinion, but it is an informed opinion that has been generated because I have done my due diligence in talking to the players and talking to the coaches and talking to scouts, not just here, but around the NFL, because that's what you have to do to be able to speak on this stuff intelligently. So I understand why you might not take my offensive line evaluation to heart, but trust and know that when I tell you this, that these are opinions that are being held by football people who are coaching your team and who are evaluating your rosters, who may be interested in whatever players fall off your roster when roster cuts come down. So I think that is something to consider. And also, the coaching staff is telling you that Dylan Radins doesn't have that right guard job locked up, right? As soon as Sadiq Charles retired, who did they start having him split reps with the ones with? Andrew Rupchich, who was one of the better players for the Tennessee Titans last night, rotating in at both guard spots. They also said of Dylan Radins, Brian Callahan said of Dylan Radins in a press conference after Sadiq Charles retired, that Dylan Radins was, quote, certainly an option there. That does not mean that it's his job to lose, right? They're not talking about Radins the same way that they talked about Nick Petit-Frere while he was on physically unable to perform and then came back in the lineup. What happened? He's immediately the starting right tackle again. The right guard situation is not set in stone. I don't necessarily know that it has to be set in stone all year long, right? Radins could get the start at the start of the year. They may decide after we get a couple of weeks into the regular season, the bye is pretty early, the week 5 bye. Maybe they see Dylan Radins for an extended period of time and say, you know what, it's not going to work for us. Or he may win that job. My point is with this in particular, it's still fluid, but Rupchich is somebody to keep an eye on in this right guard competition. I think he is going to push Radins more than Radins pushed Sadiq Charles. So something to just consider as we move through. But who helped themselves the most in this first preseason action on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch? In the comment section, you guys can chime in. Let's see. I see Spears from Pistol Ramey. I see Darth Vader saying Mason Kinsey. Corey D. Jackson says Jarvis Brownlee is going to be a player for the Titans. Patrick says Malik stock up. And I did see improvement from Malik Willis. Not perfect, but still progress. And that's all you can ask of these players. There is not some kind of huge. Malik Willis doesn't have to be the starting quarterback for the Tennessee Titans this year. All he has to do is continue to progress as the third quarterback on the Titans right now, 90-man roster. So whatever happens with Malik, once roster cuts roll around, we'll wait for that time to have that discussion. But for Malik Willis, absolutely stock up. He has consistently made improvements from preseason, from now his first preseason to this is his third preseason. You want to continue to see that growth and development. Should he ever have to play regular season snaps, something disastrous would have happened here if that ends up being the case. But I will accept Malik Willis absolutely as a player who did help themselves in that situation. Another player that I would nominate for this is Kearis Jackson, who had the 63-yard return. He's been buried, absolutely buried on the depth chart at receiver. But special teams is going to help this guy kind of crack the lineup. So for Kearis Jackson and how he's going to be able to help his team, I do think that there are some legitimate benefits there. I also think that for this team, Chance Campbell, who is not set to be a starter as an off-ball linebacker right now. Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons are going to be your starting off-ball linebackers. And I know a lot of you guys pounced upon the opportunity to bury Jack Gibbons on Twitter yesterday. And I didn't see anything egregious necessarily, though I'm sure we'll talk to Gibbons about places that he could have been better in his first preseason action, because as I mentioned, everybody but Jeff Simmons, Harold Landry, Chidobe Awuzie, and L'Jarius Sneed as the starting defense did play last night. So your starting off-ball linebackers did play. And the Niners, of course, did march down the field with their backup quarterback, Braylon Allen, 11 plays, 74 yards, and ended up scoring a touchdown on that series. The off-ball linebacker competition does not seem like it's for the starting spots, but for the depth spots right now. And again, these spots matter because those guys are going to play at some point too. Now, something to keep in mind is that they've already lost a player, Garrett Wallow, who was a primary backup. Garrett Wallow and Chance Campbell are the primary backups. Garrett Wallow is on injured reserve. He tore his pec already in training camp. So now Chance Campbell he's already surpassed, or he's passed. He's going to be ahead of Cedric Gray. He's ahead of Otis Reese and James Williams. Cedric Gray, for what it's worth, did not play in this preseason game. He is dealing with an injury. They do expect him back for the next preseason game against Seattle, which I would expect him to play a fair amount, given that they will not see the vast majority of starters in the second preseason game because joint camp, of course, this week against the Seahawks. But I thought Chance Campbell did play well. He led the team in tackles. He did have the game-sealing interception on a Josh Dobbs Hail Mary attempt with 1 second left to play. Now, maybe he needs to bat the ball down in that situation as opposed to going for the pick. But the point is, he got it done. Chance Campbell did last night, and that was one of the players that we talked to in the post-game locker room.
Fun playing for Denard's defense and Frank and the guys that we have in the room, so it was just like cool to go out and be part of a new group. So I just kind of fed off that, I think.
How much were you able to kind of take what you guys have been doing in meeting rooms and practice field and translate it over the game?
I think a good bit. I think there's always stuff to clean up when it's your first game. So I think there's a lot of stuff that we wish we would have brought along, but I think there's like good pieces that we did do. So I think it's all like, I think it's the case with any game, but especially for your first one.
The kind of downhill mentality they've been talking about with inside linebackers real suited to kind of how you play?
Yeah, I think it's fun. I think when you get cut loose and you can go run and hit, like I think, backers love that. So I enjoy it.
Does that play to your strengths, you think? Is that something that you do particularly well?
I think it's fun. I think things that are fun that generally are probably things that you feel like you're decent at. So I don't know, I just enjoy being part of the defense.
What was the last?
So that is Chance Campbell, who has lost a lot of time in his career as a sixth-round pick out of Ole Miss, sixth or seventh-round pick out of Ole Miss a couple of years ago. He's lost a lot of time due to injury, but he's making a compelling argument to make this roster as the second or rather the third or fourth off-ball linebacker on the depth chart. Lone Star Titan says he really liked J.C. Latham's post-game comments. I did talk to J.C. He gave himself a C for his performance. He was not thrilled about it. He did not necessarily. He was not his overwhelming. He has a big personality, and he was not overwhelming with his personality in the post-game locker room because I do think he was a bit disappointed in how he played it. I think he was fairly critical of himself, which is you want guys who hold themselves to a high standard. But there is definitely room for improvement there. I thought he acquitted himself well. Was he perfect? No, but he is definitively the best option for this team at left tackle heading into the 2024 season. So you feel pretty good about that. A to Z Sports Primetime is presented by the wonderful people at the great spot, TrueMav Fitness in the Gulch. Go to TrueMavFitness.com for your first workout free. No workout is ever recycled or repeated. TrueMav Fitness is there to help you achieve your fitness goals, no matter what your level of fitness is. They are there to put you in the best possible position to succeed. Personal training, group fitness classes, or just sign up for a membership and you can work out at your own leisure in their open gym. Their facility is top-notch and conveniently located in downtown Nashville in the Gulch. Go to TrueMavFitness.com for more information. And like I said, that first workout free if you live in Middle Tennessee. All right, so looking at a couple of different options where you see stock up. Curator says you and Sam's post-game live was great. Well, it wasn't live, and Rand Carthon did crash it, but yeah, we just wanted to do a couple of quick hits stuff while we were out on the field last night, and so I'm pretty sure you can find that on the A to Z Sports YouTube channel or literally wherever we live stream this show. I'm pretty sure you can find it on Facebook, YouTube. I don't know if it was on Twitter or not. Either way, I think that there are a lot of different players that you can consider guys who helped themselves in the preseason. I think Kearis Jackson and Chance Campbell are two of them, certainly. I think Malik Willis made a compelling case. I thought the Titans starting offensive line, especially on the left side, held up well. We'll get to stock down here in just a second. I'll also tell you that stock up Brian Callahan as a play caller and the operation of it. Nick Holtz was sitting in the booth. Brian Callahan on the sideline. They're working in tandem, as well as the rest of the Titans coaching staff, to call the plays on the offensive side of the ball. And we asked Brian Callahan about how he liked the operational side of things earlier this morning.
Trying to get the ball to Ridley and, dialing up plays for him. How do you go about balancing? Like, you want to do that, but you also want to not show so much in the preseason?
Yeah, we got some core basic things that, if you watch both sides of the ball, their offense and ours, there was a lot of similar concepts that they ran to. So there's plenty of things we have at our disposal that's common for the NFL that isn't giving anything away. Tried to get him on the fade ball. In the low red zone, we had an out route to him at the flat defender, buzz underneath, and it was a really nice play by Will to reset and throw the ball to the back as that coverage left the interior part of the field. So, and then he did a really nice job on that shallow cross. He sits down versus zone, and Will puts it right on the right shoulder. He turns with the ball, and then he does the rest of it with his ability, and which was good to see. So, glad he got a catch. Wanted to get him one or two in the game and get him out. Wanted to get one for Tyler. I didn't get the two calls I had for Tyler I didn't get to based on the early part of the game. I wanted to get him a catch or two and didn't, but everybody else I think got at least a target or two just so we could get moving, get those guys back feeling football again.
How do you approach the week with Seattle, and does what you do during the week impact?
So that is Brian Callahan speaking about play calling and not showing too much, getting Calvin Ridley involved in the game. Corey Avant says Reese gets no love. Who is Reese? I'm unfamiliar with. Oh, Otis Reese. Well, I mean, I don't know. He doesn't do anything to garner that kind of praise. I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with rooting for guys who are fringe roster players or what have you, but there's nothing about Otis Reese at practice that would indicate to me that that's any kind of a player that needs to get more opportunities. I know that he played well enough in the preseason game, but I don't think that, again, preseason games are only a portion of of ultimately how they decide whether or not a guy can help the football team. Practice squad, maybe he's viable as a candidate there, but I would not put or buy too much Otis Reese stock just because you're dissatisfied with your off-ball linebackers. Otis Reese has not done anything to deserve any additional play time that we've seen from him thus far. So try not to project too much of what you see in the preseason games onto the entire roster evaluation, because meeting rooms matter. We don't get to see the meeting rooms, right? Practice matters. There's not everybody has access to practice. We go to practice, and even some of the practices are closed to us throughout the course of the week. I would not though get too caught up in the idea of Otis Reese, even though some of you guys seem to be high on him, and that's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I would just say that you can clearly tell that the coaching staff is not as high on him as some of you might be, and that's okay. You can still root for him. There's nothing wrong with that. He may end up being a practice squad player. He may, there may be injuries. Otis Reese may have to play. Otis Reese had to play for you last year. He had so many injuries, but I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. So there is a lot of different things here, but stock up. If you made me pick three, stock up play calling operation from Brian Callahan, stock up Kearis Jackson, stock up Titans returners just generally. Jaquan Jackson also had a nice return as well, 26 yards to help set up the offense at their own 36-yard line. I think that was the second kick return, or rather the punt return that set up the first team offense for their second scoring drive on the day. So there's a lot of different things that I think you can pull from here. Also stock up, I'll say Andrew Rupchich. I am, if you had to have me buy stock any of those guys like Rupchich or Otis Reese or any of those dudes, I absolutely buy Rupchich stock. I think that right guard job is open for business. I do not think that Dylan Radins is in the driver's seat the way that many people would assume, and understandably so, because he's a former second-round pick, but, that hadn't been shit for 3 different offensive line coaches now, including the best offensive line coach in the NFL right now, Bill Callahan, and 2 different NFL coaching staffs have told you that Dylan Radins is probably best as a reserve. So, okay, let's keep it moving, and let's do stock down, because anytime you have stock up, you're going to have to talk stock down as well. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch in the comment section. So, which player hurt themselves the most in preseason game number 1? We will discuss at length together right after I remind you that the Primetime program is made possible by Zen Sports. Download the app, plug in the promo code ATOZTN, get up to $100 on your no danger first wager. Terms and conditions do apply. Gambling problem? Call the Tennessee Red Line, 1-800-889-9789, zensports.com for more information. And betting just gets better at Zen Sports. Who hurt themselves the most in preseason game number 1? Jake Hughes, interesting, says Tavondre Sweat. So Sweat is somebody who there's been a lot of hype about in training camp, and he has done well in training camp practices. He did not do as well in the preseason game last night. Brian Callahan was asked about it today, and he said something to the effect of, yeah, it's good for him to get out there and understand that everybody in the NFL is big and fast and that he's been going up against the same guys week after week, and now these are different guys, and it's going to feel different. It's going to look different. You're not going to be able to have as much success immediately right away because these guys can push you around in ways that you haven't been pushed around before, right? And it's tough to push around Tavondre Sweat. He did get pushed back a couple of times last night. He did get double teamed last night. Teams are clearly aware of the 370-pound, 6'4" nose tackle that the Titans drafted in the second round this year. Doesn't mean that, it's the end of the world that Tavondre Sweat didn't show out in the preseason game the way that he's been showing up at Titans practices. And they didn't leave him in there that long. I believe he got 12 total snaps to play. But there is a lot of different things. There's a lot of different things to look at. And I'm not down on Sweat. I'm push on Sweat. I think Sweat's fine. Not worried about him. His conditioning is improving. He's been available at practice. His coaching staff glows about him. There's nothing in there to really make me trend down on Tavondre Sweat. And also, what else is notable about Tavondre Sweat playing last night? In practice, Jeffrey Simmons has been out there right next to him. Last night is Marlon Davidson. There's a big difference between Marlon Davidson and Jeff Simmons. And Sebastian Joseph Day did play as well. He's going to be a starting caliber player for you. But, not having Jeff Simmons next to you where you've been able to dominate and Jeff gets one-on-one matchups and all that kind of stuff, Sweat is fine. It will look different when Jeffrey Simmons is alongside of him. So let's stock down, though. And, in fact, Bert, if you could do me a service, and I'm sorry, if you could list which of these clips is which on Brian Callahan, because I'm having trouble telling which one is which as we've rolled through this show. But there are a couple of different players that I would cite. Stock down Dylan Radins. He did take the initial snaps with the starting offense, but I do not think that he is in the driver's seat for that job. I think that Dylan Radins is a known commodity after 3 NFL seasons, heading into his 4th. I think the fact that he has not clearly and obviously established himself as the best right guard option on the football team is problematic. And I think that Andrew Rupchich having a good night inherently hurts Dylan Radins' stock. So I would go stock down on Dylan Radins. I would also go stock down on the backup running back competition, because I don't think that either of them really acquitted themselves that well last night, or any of them, between Hassan Haskins, who was good on special teams but was not as good as a running back in the offense, with Julius Chestnut, who was fine as a running back and as a receiver but was not as good as Haskins was on special teams. And I think Jabari Small is just kind of buying his time. I don't think that he is going to end up making the 53-man roster as that third running back. But the running back competition is something that I think not not necessarily trending down as the running back competition, but I don't think that any one player established themselves last night is a stock down as a group.
Calling plays, how does the personnel work? Let's use the running backs as an example. So is it Randy or Nick that's deciding if it's Tony or Tajay, or are they tagged to the play that you're calling? How's that
They
work?
are tagged, especially in the preseason, this early part, and we knew we were only going to get a handful of plays. So I was very intentional about tagging them on the plays I wanted to get them in on. So they rotated pretty clean, and they knew what plays they were going to be in for in that first set of plays. So that was intentional. It'll be some version of that in the regular season as well. You're just making sure that we put them on the plays that they feel great about. I'm not going to say it's going to rotate every other play or anything like that. It kind of felt like that early on, but yeah, we'll tag those guys on most plays when we want those guys in the game, and we'll be more intentional too about where we put the other receivers as well. We're going to have 5 to 6 guys up on game day, and those guys all have roles. They'll have plenty of different places. We'll tag those guys too. So that process is usually done during the course of the week, and on game day it's pretty well settled.
Running backs, how do you view Chestnut and Haskins right now? Were you kind of using them the way you used Pollard and Spears?
Yeah, we were trying to get a good look. That's a position battle. That third back role, and the special teams comes into that as well. I think Hassan played really, really well in special teams yesterday. I think Julius was solid. I thought Julius had a better day on the ground carrying the ball and in the passing game. But that's a job that's being competed for. I think that they're both bigger backs. They're strong. They're physical. So that role is an important one. It's an important one for special teams, and I think that's a battle you're going to continue to see over the next 2.5, 3 weeks.
So that is Brian Callahan speaking on the backup running back competition. So stock down Dylan Radins, stock down just the third running back spot, because I don't think anybody's clearly established themselves there yet. And then stock down Titans pass rush. I know, again, Jeff Simmons not being out there matters. Harold Landry not being out there matters. But I'm going to assume that Jeff and Harold are not going to play all 17 games next year, and that at some point you're going to have to lean on your depth. And I think Sebastian Joseph's Day is a quality player. Beyond that, though, I am really down on your pass rush. Again, Jeff and Landry playing and being healthy makes this an infinitely better pass rush. So perhaps this is one of those things that is specific to the preseason. But Arden Key played last night. At some point, Arden Key's not going to be out there. So then you're talking about Rashad Weaver, who did have a batted pass, but I'm not seeing it in training camp practices. It's not like Dylan Radins, because I think Weaver is better at what he does than Radins is at what he does, right? I think Rashad Weaver to be a better player at his position than Dylan Radins is at his position. But it's still not good enough. Jalen Harrell, 7th round pick, getting, run with the ones last night, run with the first team, second team, and third team last night. Not good enough. Marlon Davidson, TK McClendon, Keandre Coburn, interior defensive lineman, not good enough. The stock down on the Titans' pass rush depth right now, which of course is something that they're familiar with, even though to hear Brian Callahan speak about, this is specifically about Jalen Harrell, you'll hear that in just a second. He was complimentary of it, and maybe Harrell can do some things for you. Curator says, Bucks always got to find something. Well, yeah, you're not a perfect football team. What do you think? You're going 20-0 this year? You think you're winning the Super Bowl in 2024? Of course not. You went 6-11 last year. The year before, you lost 7 straight games to blow a lock divisional lead, right? This is a football team that is in a rebuilding phase and did well this offseason to, clean house, and bring in a lot of new talent. But they can't fix everything in one offseason. So don't fool yourself into thinking that this is, just because the offseason went almost completely to plan. It's a good offseason that the Titans were able to have. They're not a complete football team. They do have clear and obvious deficiencies. Right guard is a clear and obvious deficiency. Pass rush is a clear and obvious deficiency. There are going to be a couple of different things that crop up that cost you. And this is a part of this, to identify what may cause you to struggle and how they go about fixing it. they can still sign free agent pass rush players. I would anticipate that they will sign a player to help with their pass rush at some point before the initial 53-man roster is put together. Shane Ray, who has been in and out of the NFL after being a former failed first-round pick to the Denver Broncos, Shane Ray, as a late-stage ad in training camp, cannot be the solution, the season-long solution for your pass rush. Your pass rush needs more help. So I don't think there's anything wrong. Curator says it's the first preseason game. Nobody is saying we're going straight to the playoffs. No, but you're acting like me pointing out something to be critical of. Is, Buck's always got to find something. Yeah, no shit. You weren't able to rush the passer last night. That's pretty important. You've seen the quarterbacks on your schedule in the first couple of weeks of the NFL season. Caleb Williams is a rookie. Yes, fine, but he's still a pretty good quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is your home opener. Fair to expect that Rodgers is going to be healthy in week 2 unless, God forbid, something catastrophic happens. He's going to be able to cause you some problems if you cannot effectively pressure the quarterback. Landry, Simmons, Snead, Awuzie. Those guys are all going to help. I don't think it's, disaster just based off one preseason game, but you can identify a couple of different places where this is going to be an issue, and pass rush is clearly and obviously one. To ignore that is foolish. You can be foolish, you can be ignorant if you want to, or you can understand that there's a couple of different things here that need to be improved. There can always be improvement across the board. J.C. Latham, starting left tackle. Was he perfect last night? Shit, no. He's going to get better. I'm not worried about that. But the pass rush, you don't have a J.C. Latham on the pass rush side of things. You got Sweat. He's an interior player. You've got Jeff. You've got Harold. In the absence of those guys, assuming that all 3 of those guys are not going to be completely and totally healthy for an entire NFL football season, definitively, you need more depth. So that's kind of where we're at with the stock up, stock down conversation. All right, so we're going to have 3 hours to break this down because there's a lot of different things that we weren't able to cover. Tight ends are an interesting conversation. Wide receiver, we have not talked at all about Traylon Burks only having 1 catch in the football game. We have not talked about the backup quarterback conversation really, other than noticing that Malik Willis has improved. So we will have 3 hours to talk about all of these things tomorrow on 104.5 The Zone. And speaking of which, joint camp practices with the Seattle Seahawks. The first time Seattle has had joint camp work against another team since 1991. Pretty crazy. Going to be hot and heavy. Going to be later in the day since Seattle is coming east and are on West Coast time. The practices have been at 8 a.m. in the morning. It's going to be at 10 a.m. and it's going to be hot as shit out there. So this is going to be some real quality work that we see the Titans ones get against a legitimately a playoff caliber team in Seattle. And also worth noting that the radio show, we're going to be broadcasting live out there for the duration of joint camp practices with the Seahawks. And Thursday of this week, Will Levis is on the radio show, and we're looking forward to having the Titans starting quarterback on the radio program. Also, Greg Cosell is flying in, the executive producer and head of NFL Films Analysis. Greg is going to be on the radio show. He's going to be taking in Seahawks practice, Seahawks-Titans practice. He's going to be talking to the coaching staff. He's going to be sitting down with us both days. So for those of you who listen to the Install podcast, we will have 2 live ones on the radio show with Greg taking in specifically Titans practice. So Levis, Cosell, we'll probably have some other fun guests as well. From 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Caleb Meadows says fights will occur this week. Yes, I would absolutely expect fights to occur this week. I texted Mina Kimes at ESPN, who famously is a diehard Seattle Seahawks fan, and I said, who starts a fight first this week, DK or Jeff Simmons? And all she sent me back was LOL. Yeah, I would anticipate that is something that is going to be worth paying attention to in these joint camp practices. And you know what? That's as long as nobody actually gets hurt, that's okay. Cricket says no Simmons interview yet. So funny story real quickly before we get to Sunday Funday and wrap this thing up, because I know we've gone longer tonight because we actually have I almost cussed. We actually have a football game to talk about. Settle down, Bert. It's okay. I'm not gonna drop any F-bombs tonight yet. But no, right now we are not scheduled to have Jeffrey Simmons on the radio show. 2, I do not expect that they would. Here's the thing about Jeff and the radio show. Okay, not just because of the interaction that Jeff and I had, because we're past that. We're long past that. Jeff and I have talked it out, like grown adults. What happened on the radio show live on camera was unfortunate, but that shit happens all the time, and you guys just don't see it because, yeah, I'm critical of players. Kaharski's critical of players. Joe Rexrode is critical of players. Tehran is critical of players. We have exchanges with players that look a lot like that, except you guys don't see most of them that happen that way. But quick point on Jeff and an interview on the radio show. Jeff Simmons is a crazy person on the football field, right? That's why you love him. When he practices, he also brings that same energy. So putting Jeff on a live radio show after joint camp practices with the Seattle Seahawks that are going to be hotter, that are going to be more intense, and that are going to be very physical is probably not the best idea for Titans PR. To sit him down after one of these practices, which is, that was the first day of padded practice, right? When Jeff and I had that exchange, and Jeff was clearly, the switch was still on as opposed to off for Jeff Simmons. And so you see that kind of intensity. Probably not in their best interest to put Jeff on the radio show after a joint training camp practice where a lot of these factors are going to come into play. It would be, you want to have more control of the situation, and not that Jeff isn't an adult and can't control himself, but it's just not the safest environment. If you are trying to, if you're trying to protect Jeff from having a moment that is more explosive than not, if that makes any sense to you guys. So, at some point we will have Jeffrey Simmons on the radio show. If it's during training camp, if it's not during training camp, it's not the end of the world. I would expect us to have him at some point during the football season, and I promise you it's not going to be as deep as everybody tries to make it. Chris Frazier says he's may knock Buck out. You guys are so dramatic. I have covered Jeff for 6 years. Jeff and I have been working together for way, way longer than just that individual moment. But that's the only moment that you guys have seen of something like that. And so apparently that's the only moment that you guys associate with me and Jeffrey Simmons, which I think is dumb, but it's okay. It is funny though. So another side note before we move on to Sunday Funday and wrap this bad boy up. At Titans games, there's no way to not sound like a douchebag by saying this, but occasionally people ask me to sign stuff, and that's cool, right? You're down there trying to get players' autographs, coaches' autographs, and stuff like that. But occasionally somebody asks me to sign something, and that's cool. Like, whatever. It's a surreal thing. Nobody should ever want my autograph for anything, except for there were two funny autograph moments yesterday. One, somebody had a printed out picture of me from a previous game that we had taken a picture, that he had asked for a picture for me to sign on a little board, and I thought that was funny. So shout out to that guy. That made me laugh. The second thing that made me laugh was somebody had me sign a Jeff Simmons jersey. And that also made me laugh very, very hard, because he said he held down a jersey for me to sign. I go, "You don't want my autograph?" And he goes, "No, I promise you I do." And then I looked at the jersey that the kid was asking me to sign, and it was a Jeffrey Simmons jersey. And I out loud cackled, and I said, "Don't tell him." And then I signed the jersey. So that was pretty funny. I really appreciate that person's sense of humor. If I wanted to really lean in, I would have signed it, quote unquote, with the P word. Obviously, I can't say the P word on live. I mean, I could, but we won't, because it's a family safe internet show, and I don't know that the sponsors would like that. But if I wanted to be really, really funny, I would have signed it with the P word, and then with my name under it, Buck Rising. But I didn't think that writing profane words on this person's jersey was the best way to go. Maybe next time. So now for Sunday Funday, the best thing that we saw on the internet this weekend: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch. In the comment section, if you want to get involved, what is the best thing that you saw on the internet this weekend? And it could be Titans highlights, because Titans games are back. There are all kinds of different things. It could be that football, just generally football highlights, all kinds of stuff being talked about, football discussion, football games, football, gambling, all these kind of different things are are all good to have back in our lives. The best thing that you saw on the internet, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch, in the comment section. Karen says the Olympics closing ceremony. I did not get the opportunity to see that. I would very much like to see that because the Olympic coverage has been excellent. Chris Frazier says football. You let me know what the best thing you saw on the internet this week. Bert has something down here that I have yet to review, but I guess we'll do it live, Bill O'Reilly style, on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and on Twitch, while I tell you that the Primetime program is made possible by the Ashton Real Estate Group of RE/MAX Advantage. Go to GaryAshton.com. Get your dream address without the stress. Get the intel edge you need to succeed with the Ashton team. They will put you in the best possible position. I'm a customer of the Gary Ashton team. They got me, they helped me get my house 5 years ago, back in 2019, which like I said, I say this all the time. Gary Ashton is a friend of mine. I love Gary anyway. I could kiss Gary on his damn bald head for putting me or for helping me find this home and seeing the way that it's helped my property value, just the same way that they can help you. That's the intel edge at GaryAshton.com. Lone Star Titan simply says the best thing he saw on the internet this week was football, football, football. That is correct. Football is back. Football is just, the air that we all wait to breathe. It felt better to me this weekend to have even preseason football back than it is to have oxygen in my lungs. Truly, I don't know what to do with myself when I'm not covering football games. Unfortunately for my girlfriend, Grace, who is very, very patient with all of my eccentricities and bullshit. But the thing that I love the most is covering football games, covering an NFL season. And we're back and better than ever. Now, that's not what we have brought to the table for Sunday Funday, apparently. I don't know what Bert has brought to the table, but I guess it's time for all of us to find out.
I heard Swiftie, and if he had a gun to his head and had to recite one song to live, he would do You Belong With Me by Taylor Swift, and it's terrible.
He likes ancient history, UFOs, and aliens.
Will loves flowers. His favorite flower is blue hydrangeas, and he wants a hydrangea garden one day.
When we were in California, he got his scuba masters, and he would actually teach people how to scuba dive on his off days.
He can recite the entire Shrek movie from start to end, word for word.
He loved rotel. He loved any type of rotel. Crawfish rotel, shrimp rotel, chicken rotel, literally any rotel. It's actually kind of disgusting, but.
He has a whole entire collection of Star Wars Legos.
He plays the piano.
He could do the splits. He likes to fish.
He is sneaky good at random games like ping pong, cornhole. He will demolish you, so don't even try.
As a kid, he never left the house other than with his cowboy boots and his cowboy hat, and we all call him Cowboy Dan.
Mason was in a talent show when he was little and sang Shackles and beatboxed and won the whole talent show.
Nick, when he was a kid, was at Jessica Biel's house with her brother, jumping on the trampoline and fell off and broke his arm, and now it's bowed. So now he can say he broke his arm at Jessica Biel.
Okay, so that is a TikTok from the Titans official Twitter account of their wives and their girlfriends and their significant others telling odd facts about the Tennessee Titans roster. So Will Levis, hydrangea guy. Well, I assume it'll come up on the radio show at some point this week. That is going to do it for us tonight on the Primetime Show. You know how I know that the show's over and that we've gone too long? Almost an hour tonight, which means that football season is officially back. I know that the show is over because Frances has made an appearance. She's ready for dinner, which means that I have to go. Have a great rest of your evening. Radio show tomorrow, 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone. Don't forget, you need to be, if you don't get the radio show live, one, you need to try it. It's worth a try if you don't listen to the radio show live. It's a great time. But the podcast, if you miss any of the 3 hours that we do, because there's going to be jam-packed, loaded stuff on the radio show this week, including Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Will Levis is on the radio show. We're expecting to have more Titans players live at camp, and we'll continue to do so. Because now that football season is here, training camp, we have players on every week of the training camp, regular season or preseason, regular season. And if they make the postseason, we'll have players on too. So it is your one-stop shop for all things Titans coverage, just like A to Z Sports, where you can read everything that I write at atozsports.com, including Will Levis' first half analysis, instant reaction kind of stuff, and great things like the J.C. Latham article that I wrote after having JC on the radio show this week and finding out that he almost skipped his football career to pursue a path as a Disney Channel star because he had a big crush on Zendaya while she was still on Disney Channel. So, interesting story there. Another reason why you should check out the radio show. Guests have included so far Tavondre Sweat, Rand Carthon, J.C. Latham. Who else have we had on? Chig, Roger McCreary. Hell, you may even get the Jeff Simmons moment if you go back far enough in the podcast. Have a great rest of your evening. Radio show from 10 to 1 on 104.5 The Zone tomorrow. And thank God football is back.
Go home! Go home! Go home! You're embarrassing Nashville! Go home!